Well, hi, I'm talking to the Reverend Tom Vaughan, who is the rector of Holy Trinity in Welland. We have been friends now for a couple of years, Tom.
We have.
And I thought it would be interesting for folks to hear something about your experience of being mentored. Because you are an ordained priest, you've got your MDiv, you've been in ordained ministry for 20 years, you're a senior priest in the diocese. What on earth made you think that at this stage of your life and ministry, you needed a mentor?
I think that's an excellent question, John. First of all, greetings to everyone, and thank you for being willing to listen to me on a recording. There should be some kind of prize for that. But it's an honor to be with you and to discuss what I think is a pretty important matter, and that is being willing to learn outside of ourselves and our own experience, and also outside of our own tradition. So for a while now, John, my observations of parish life with colleagues in the diocese and across the Anglican Church of Canada has been watching this slide that you and I talk about quite often around church attendance and the sort of lack of engagement. And reflecting on that during my ministry here at Holy Trinity in Welland became particularly helpful as I watched some of the direction that the church has taken in our missional ministries explode and triple in size, while the congregation still was experiencing some of those things and still does. A lot of Anglican congregations, we've had some new families, some folks join, but I also bury people when they die, and we still have some of those same demographics. So I thought to myself, I'm curious about what's going on in other places. So that's really where it started, John, really understanding there must be so much more to learn outside of my own experience, outside of my own tradition, and trying to resource that.
I think that is quite courageous. But having got to that point, okay, I think there's stuff I need to learn, and maybe it's from other traditions. It's one thing to come to that conclusion, but how then do you find the right person? How did you find your mentor?
I'm glad you asked. And maybe this is something that as an extrovert I was able to do. I don't know if it would be different for others. But I actually walked into a church one day, a church not mine, in St. Catharines, and it was called Glenridge Bible Church. They've been known for lots of things in the city around their music program and so on and so forth. And also the use of their sign outside to advertise various things going on and sermon series. And I think one day I was really caught by 5 weeks on The Better Parent. And I sort of thought, I'm going to go in and talk to the office in there. So I walked in, and secretary kind of said, can I help you? And they're a min. And I said, is the lead pastor here? And she said, as a matter of fact, he is. And so I was able to meet Dave and told him why I was there, and sort of was drawn into this sign. And I just sort of started saying, do you have a few minutes? Is that okay? And I said, and don't worry, I'm no competition. I'm an Anglican priest. I have an Anglican parish. Well, then he burst out laughing and he said, I like you. I said, well, I think I could like you, but it might take some time. So then we sat down together and actually had a coffee that was offered to me. And I just said to him, what's with the sign? How do you come up with be a better parent, 5 weeks? What's that like? He said, well, there's a group around me. He said, I'm the pastor of teaching and vision. He said, that's the only thing that I'm responsible for here. He said, but there's a group around me, that goes to chapters and looks at the bestsellers. What is on people's minds? What is on people's hearts? And he said, for right now, there's a lot of things going on around parenting. And so he said, someone sort of bought a couple of those books, brought it to the vision table, and sort of said, we need to talk about how we missionally bring this to the wider community of St. Catharines and invite people in, and we'll use the latest scholarship and the authors that are known for this, and we'll build scripture and faithful teaching around what does it look like to be a better parent? What might we offer people in our tradition they might want to think about to be a better parent based on the teachings of the faith? So, John, I was quite curious about that and wanted to talk to him further. We hit it off. And that was the kind of initial. I knew how to find him after then. We exchanged some contact information. I said to him, would love to have coffee with you again. He said, I think we could do that. So, and maybe that was because I was no competition, John. I mean, I can't tell you why, but there was something about the sit down that he was willing to sit down with me again.
And where did it go from there? Did you begin to meet monthly over coffee, weekly, every 6 months? I mean, what were the dynamic? I mean, the practical aspects of it.
Certainly in the beginning, I think I saw him within 2 weeks of that first sit down. I wanted to sort of, ascertain whether or not there could be a symbiotic relationship there going forward. And so I made plans to sit with Dave within 2 weeks. And we just continued to have these great conversations about the church and about ministry and about our traditions. And at one point I sort of said to him, would you be willing to do this with me from time to time? And he said he would. And so really what grew, John, was a friendship, certainly a mentorship. If you asked Dave, he would say Tom and I are friends, but I would say he's become a mentor around the types of things I can bring to him that he and I can explore together. It doesn't mean I'm trying to turn this church into Glen Ridge Bible Chapel, okay, or into the latest box church. That's not what we're doing at Holy Trinity. It's just interesting relationship to be able to toss out things that are not working anymore, that used to work, that don't anymore, and to bring that to the leadership team, quite frankly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is, I think, a fine line between mentoring and friendship, and a lot of the time it really doesn't matter. I just want to pick up on what you said about, these are my words, making sure it was a good fit. I mean,
Yes.
I think it's like finding a counselor or finding a spiritual director. There has to be a rapport or the thing is not going to work. And you obviously had that with Dave.
And continue to. I mean, Dave and I are friends, and it may not be every month anymore, especially with these times that we're facing. But I would still see him every other month anyhow.
Yeah. Tom, has he been to Holy Trinity, and have you been to Glen Ridge?
Yes. In fact, I've gone to some of their music events at night just to support him.
Yeah, lovely.
And he has come here for some things as well. And yeah.
Anglicans listening to this, I think, would be intrigued and perhaps concerned that Dave is not an Anglican, doesn't understand our tradition, maybe doesn't understand why we do the things that we do. Would you say that's been a plus or a minus?
I would say it's been a plus because, John, if I could take you to one of my principal questions that I really engaged him with. I mean, he and I sat down, one of the first things I said to him was, studies have shown in the last 50 years that the pyramid has completely flipped. Roman Catholics and Anglicans around this region used to have the largest Sunday schools, the largest Sunday congregations 50 years ago, and the Gospel Light Church and the Glen Ridges of the world were here with middling small congregations. And he said, that's right, Tom, that's true. And so I wanted to have an entry point of conversation and for your students in this course. And by the way, which parishes are represented? If you could briefly tell me, John.
St. John's Jordan, Incarnation, Oakville, the parish in Granby, Quebec, and one person from the diocesan office in Montreal.
That's incredible, because those are my favorite parishes in this diocese outside of my own.
One deacon whom I gather you know.
Yes, and I knew he was in this course.
He's in
It's amazing how those are some of my favorite parishes in this diocese outside of my own, and wonderful diocesan employees too that I've heard good things about. And I believe you got a famous podcaster in this group too.
Oh, Reverend Mancor. Yes, he is unusually famous for this. Tom, I'm not quite sure why he's not teaching the course rather than being a student in it, but we carry on anyway.
This is a good point, and we don't want to turn this to a podcast. I also am no competition to him as well, but
Right.
anyhow, moving
All
on
right.
with all of those
The
things
business,
and the wonderful
that's
people
right.
you have in the group. I think, John, that is an entry point, though, for your students to look at what the statistics have shown around our model of ministry and how it's completely flipped, however you want to describe that. And so I've said to Dave, talk to me about this. And he said, well, I'm glad you asked. And he said, at times we've had conferences about you. I said, not me. He said, no, not you, Tom. He says, about the Anglican Church. He said, long time ago, he said, you did us a great favor when you stopped being the community hub of morning and evening prayer and Compline in your small towns, of matins on Sunday morning with teaching and longer sermons, and were the kind of focus for Christian faith formation. He said, I don't know if you've ever talked about that as a tradition or knew some of the damage that created. But he said, we've had conversations and conferences about that over the years. And that's certainly a moment where you sort of pause and think. Now, I'm not saying he'd be 100% right about that, John. You're much more positioned to describe the nuance involved in that kind of comment. I found it intriguing.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So coming back to Holy Trinity Welland, how many years have you been talking with Dave?
Oh gosh, now about 5.
5. Can you pinpoint some specific changes that an observer would notice if they had come 5 years ago and then went away and came back 5 years later, such that they would say, what the heck is going on around here? Who's Tom been talking to? Are there specific practical things?
I would say one of the first things would be Dave's ability to help me see the importance of addressing the seeker. At the very same time, inviting people back to the foundations. I mean, John, when I think about some of the work you've done, when I think about some of the courses, the texts coming out of seminaries right now, there is this pattern of inviting the church back to the foundations. When I think of our bishop, Susan Bell, and her contribution to Christian Foundations out of Toronto, there is this whole recommendation, if you will, to re-engage the basics of the faith. I think that's one of the first things that people would see about Holy Trinity over the last 5 years. Accelerated that online with seekers and newcomers, advertising series. What is prayer? Why do bad things happen to good people? I mean, some of the big questions of faith that people have, we have tried to engage deeply in that way. We've gone back to what is the Lord's Prayer? How is it formed? Why is it important? What does it mean? And we'll do a number of weeks on this. And in particular, during the online time, the development of online ministry, it became incredibly critical as a conduit for people who were curious about the church.
Yes, I remember during COVID, I think I'm right that you did a series on difficult questions about faith or something like that. And you got a significant number watching.
We did, yes. And it was posters, and it was advertised online. It was based on Tim Keller's book, The Reason for God.
Oh, yeah.
So really kind of looked at and examined what is the evidence for belief in God? What is the argument philosophically, theologically? What are the clues in nature? And people were drawn in a curious way to that series.
Yes, my memory is that it was in the hundreds, which is very unusual for Anglican online services. And you've had some people showing up in person since it's been possible to come back in person.
We have. We've had some new families. Our online ministry has been a gift to the church, and every person who has come in person has first come online. And John, as in your role, you'll find this fascinating. I asked one of the visitors one Sunday about the importance of that, of having discovered us first online before coming in person.
Mhm.
And he described it, coming to a church to the blue without that kind of conduit as stepping naked out of a bathtub.
Wow. Wow.
When you think about the exposure, and I
Mhm.
can't get too much into that, we've got all kinds of policies, got to be careful with this conversation. But when I think about the nature of that comment as a vulnerable exposure, if you will,
Mhm.
imagine people feeling that way when we invite them to church.
Yes.
The online gives that safe entry point, it seems to me. And every newcomer we've had has described that online as critical.
Yes. No, it's we don't provide on-ramps into church life. It's either you're outside or you're inside. And online has provided this easy way to feel your way in and decide. You can, you can stop watching at any point. You can just switch it off and go do something else. So
Yeah.
it's very easy to put your clothes on as you get closer to showing up in person.
Yes.
We should stop, but I imagine there are people watching this who are saying, oh, maybe I should explore that. So two final questions. One, how do I know if a mentor would be right for me? And then maybe the harder question, where the heck do I find one? Do you have any
Mm.
advice on those?
Hmm. I would say, again, fit is everything. The recommendation would be to look outside the Anglican tradition. Certainly, it's important, that we have. I think in my life in ministry, I've had multiple mentors, and I have a spiritual director and such. But I think outside of our tradition is really important, because then we get a sense of sort of what's happening in other places. We can have blinders on of the way that our own faith tradition works, and the conversations we have with colleagues at the regional clericus meetings, for example, and their experience. As laity, we can have blinders on with the conversations we constantly have with fellow wardens or team members on parish council, to look outside of our own church tradition, I think is increasingly important. Um, and that being said, I don't want anyone on here to think that because of this mentorship, clearly Tom has it all figured out, and the money is always coming in. And no, there is an ongoing struggle, I think, in my midst as well, around each year making sure we're faithful, we're solvent, people are fed in all the ways we hope in a parish life. We'll still die. There's still all of those struggles, especially coming out of COVID. We are still going through what I'm hearing is happening across our diocese. There are less of the faithful who have come back to the principal family service of the day. It's taking more time. We are still very much in that vulnerable experience as well.
Yeah.
I think mentorship, though, does provide a helpful support, an arch, if you will, around our ministries. It provides conversation think tank that, with hope, you can go to your team to engage deeper questions. For example, one of the things that we've applied is really a robust response to newcomers and volunteers in our parish, involving them right away, looking at appreciation events, friendship events that invite people into the aroma of Christianity. It's like when Jesus' feet were anointed with the oil, with the ointment, and the aroma of that act was so transformative.
Yeah.
So
Tom.
we still are in the same kind of position, John, as so many of your students and so many across church. Mentorship does make a difference. That's what I would want to say.
Yes, no, your story and your example is very helpful and motivating. I'm sure there were people thinking, oh, yeah, I should look around, see what I could find. I mean, my sense is that it has enriched your Anglicanism. It has not diluted your Anglicanism, and that Dave is respectful of that.
Oh, no, it is absolutely enriched my Anglicanism. And it's also given me a pause to reach back and from my conversations with him, think about, how is it that I speak on Sundays? What coded language am I using that seekers and newcomers are saying, what's the BAS? Hey, what sounds like some kind of virus, so now I would say Green Book, your green
Mhm.
service books or our green service books
Yeah.
in your seats. And for those at home, I know you're not going to have those, but hang with me here. So it's just that kind of engagement overall in ways
Yeah.
that
Great.
bring more heart
Mhm.
into what can be quite refined structural kind of liturgy, if that makes sense to you.
Mhm. Tom, thank you. I'm sure you wouldn't mind if people want to track you down and send you an email to ask further questions about this.
Of course, please provide them with my email and
Well,
contact.
thank you. Thank you. So we're very grateful for your time and for sharing your experience with us. I think it's very important in this day and age.
You're
Thanks,
very
Tom.
welcome, and thank you for having me, and blessings to all of your students in this course. And I hope this has been somewhat helpful.
Thank you, Tom. It absolutely has. Appreciate it.
Okay.